welcome to the first reading vlog of 2025. I'm super excited for today's reading vlog because I'm going to be starting like a new series of reading vlogs. One of my reading goals this year is to diversify my reading a little bit more, expanding the different genres that I read, as well as reading more books from diverse authors with more diverse representation. So I thought it'd be fun to find and read books specifically by different authors from different countries around the world. In general, I am trying to diversify my reads a bit more, but this video idea specifically was inspired by Jack Edwards. There's a series on his channel where he finds and buys books from authors from different countries around the world in a specific continent. So I am doing something similar, but on a much smaller scale and then as a reading vlog. And as for any vlog as part of this series or any reading vlog in general, I would love to hear any recommendations of more diverse reads of any genre. I typically gravitate towards fantasy, romance, general fiction, but as I'm trying to diversify my reads in general, I would just love to hear any recommendations at all. For this first episode, we are keeping it super simple with 3 books from 3 authors in countries that I already commonly read books from. And those countries are Canada, US, and England. Representing Canada is Pure Color by Sheila Heti. I think that's how you pronounce her last name. This is a literary fiction with concepts of magical realism. Essentially, the main character Mira, she leaves home to study and she meets Annie, who I think is the other main character in this book. Fast forward a few years, Mira's father dies, and when he passes away, his spirit passes through Mira, and together they become a leaf on a tree. Mira must try to remember the human world and Annie, and either decide if she wants to stay a leaf on a tree with her past father, or if she wants to return to the human world. The way that the synopsis is written makes me think that the storytelling is going to be a little bit odd and absurd, which I'm kind of excited about. It's also a very short book, so I think it'll be very easy to get through. I feel like this is going to be a book that is very character driven. This author is Canadian and she currently resides in Toronto, Ontario in Canada. She has written about 10 books. She's also done a lot of talks and lectures at different festivals and universities around the world. Representing the United States, we have Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. This is a mystery thriller fiction. The synopsis doesn't explicitly state that it's about Ted Bundy's victims, but I think it's just something that is well known. And I think the author also uses quotes from the court cases. Bright Young Woman follows 2 main characters, Pamela and Tina. Pamela is the president of a sorority in Florida State University, and one night she doesn't go out, but her sorority does, and she wakes up in the middle of the night to find 2 of her sorority sisters dead. So Pamela's kind of pulled into the case and the mystery of this because she's the one that had found them. On the other side of the country in Seattle is Tina, the other main character. She befriends a woman named Ruth, and Ruth suddenly mysteriously goes missing, and Tina is determined to find her and figure out what happened to Ruth. And because of those 2 cases, Tina and Pamela's paths end up crossing somehow. This author has written 3 books in total. This is her 3rd book. I think it just came out last year, I want to say. This author grew up in Philadelphia and she currently resides in LA. And lastly, representing England, we have The Lost for Words bookshop by Stephanie Butland. This is a contemporary romance or contemporary fiction with a subplot of romance. This book is about Loveday. She owns a bookshop, she prefers books over people, and she's hiding something mysterious in her past. One day, a poet, a lover, and 3 mysterious deliveries arrive at her doorstep, and she is afraid that her past is going to be revealed. So I think it's probably a little bit of a mystery element in here too, trying to uncover what Loveday is hiding. The author of this book is from Northumberland, England. It is in the northeastern part of England near Scotland. I believe this is the author's first novel, and I haven't really heard anyone else talk about this book, but it seems super bookish and cozy. I love books about books and about characters who love books, so I'm super excited to get to this one eventually. So this is the book stack for this week to kick off the Around the World in Books series. So I just had to figure out which one I want to start with, and then we'll go from there. started reading and I haven't given it any sort of update yet. The book I decided to start with was Bright Young Woman by Jessica Knoll. I originally said this was a mystery thriller, but I think it reads more like a contemporary fiction with mystery thriller components to it. I don't read a lot of mystery thrillers, but from what I've gathered from what I've read, I feel like mystery thrillers are often pretty fast-paced. The writing kind of follows a similar flow. And the reason why I would say this reads more like a contemporary fiction is that it doesn't read like a mystery thriller. I wouldn't say it's fast-paced and engaging in a way that I know mystery thrillers to be. Jessica Knoll's prose is so beautiful. There are some quotes in here about certain topics that I feel like I've never really been able to articulate well. And I feel like the way that she crafts these heavy topics into her main characters' lives and how she conveys them in her storytelling is done so well. And I love how she's able to incorporate important topics into this book and into the characters in such a well nuanced way. The only problem I have is the dialogue. I feel like a majority of the writing is done so well and the characters start speaking to each other and it feels like a completely different author writing this book. A little bit more about this book. It does follow multiple POVs and timelines. You get Pamela in present day, Pamela at the time of the incident, as well as Ruth, who is Tina's best friend who had gone missing. But yeah, overall, I'm really enjoying this book so far. I also really love Pamela as a main character. She's like a very type A, get things done person. She's a shell of herself if she's not helping someone problem solve. And I feel like her inner monologue and being inside her head has been very interesting to read about, especially going through the situation that she's currently going through and having to be like the leader of a house. So far, I have read 260 pages and this book has about 370. So I have a little bit over 100 pages left to go in this book. I do have a couple of things that I need to do today, but other than that, I think I'll be able to do a little bit of reading. And I'll probably finish this book by the end of the day. Book I had finished Bright Young Woman and then I started a new book as well, and now I'm pretty much almost done that book. I think I have under 100 pages left, so I thought it'd be a good time to do a reading update. Starting off with talking about Bright Young Woman, I did end up finishing a couple days ago when I said I would. A couple of final thoughts on this book. I would say it is very well written and I think it's definitely a good book. I would say that if you're in the mood for a mystery thriller, I feel like you would be disappointed. Obviously the main theme of this book is about a serial killer, but I would say that for a majority of the book it doesn't read like a thriller. There are thrilling aspects and scenes and things that happen. Other than that, I think it reads more like contemporary fiction. The messaging in this is very strong. There are a lot of important topics discussed, and yes, there are thrilling aspects, but I feel like the broader picture of it is talking about misogyny and how society treats women and how the serial killer story fits into that messaging. There was a lot of thought put into this book into centering the female victims and decentering the perpetrator or the offender, and that was done by not naming the offender. He is called the defendant throughout the entire book. There's a lot of focus on the female victims, their relationships, as well as sisterhood, and emphasizing the importance of female relationships in times like this. Despite the book decentering the male offender, it is still a retelling of a male offender story, and I think also the two victims' stories that are talked about in this book are taken from real life victim stories as well. So that being said, I don't really know how to feel about this book. I think the author was trying to do a very good thing with what she was trying to portray. At the end of the day, it is kind of still a retelling about Ted Bundy. I think I'm gonna sit at a 4.5 rating for this book. I loved most of the writing, I loved the messaging and some of the quotes that this author had, and I would recommend this book, but not if you're specifically going into it thinking it is a mystery thriller. The next book I decided to read was The Lost for Words Bookshop by Stephanie Butland. I got this book off a book outlet and I didn't notice this until I started reading the book, but the front cover is defective. It totally does not have the words "The Lost For." Usually the only defects on book outlet books are like little black Sharpie marks on the spines, or like something's bent or some of the pages are a little wrinkled or something, but I've never noticed a big mistake like that. So I thought that was really funny. But anyway, onto the actual book. This book is about Loveday. She is kind of a recluse. The only friend or person that she kind of keeps close in her life is Archie, who's the bookshop owner. Archie is kind of a family figure to her. You find out pretty early on that she grew up in a foster home, like past the age of 10 years old or something. So you're kind of unraveling things about her past as you go along in the story and kind of why she ended up in the foster home. So far, this book is told in 3 different timelines, all in Loveday's perspective. The first one is named Poetry, which takes place in 2016. The second one is named History, which takes place in 2013. And then the last one is named Crime, which takes place in 1999. But in the Poetry timeline, she's 25 years old. She's working at the bookshop. One day, she finds a poetry book on the street, so she decides to put up like a found sign in the bookshop, and someone does end up collecting the book, and he becomes the love interest in that timeline. I'm actually enjoying this book a lot. I started it yesterday, and I'm already on page 239, so I'm almost done this book. There's about 340 pages in this book, so I have about 100 pages left, which I definitely think I'll be able to finish today. Some of the writing is very interesting, obviously because this author is from England, so some slang and language is definitely different, but I am very much enjoying her writing as well. I'm enjoying Loveday as a character a lot as well. Despite how the romance is such a small subplot, I love the romance bits in here. There was just some scenes in here that are very simple but also very cute and endearing. This book does talk about a couple of darker topics as well, to do with her family and to do with her past relationships and the things that are just going on in her head. But I will say that I dislike about this book currently is that Loveday and the love interest Nathan are currently kind of having like communication and trust issues because Loveday won't open up. And the way that the author has written the book, you kind of can infer what had happened in her past to make her not want to open up in the future, but it's not explicitly said, and it kind of just makes it seem like she's hiding this huge mystery. But as a reader, I feel like it is a bit more frustrating to read that because you're inside her head, but she won't explain what her big secret is or the reason why she isn't trusting. And when she's being closed off to other characters in the book, she's also being closed off to the reader, which doesn't make sense to me because you are literally inside her brain. But anyway, enough talking. I will try to finish this book today, and then I'll start the last book tomorrow, which is The Weekend. Like 5 minutes ago. The last 100 pages of this book packs a punch. Like, so many things happen. I would say a majority of the book is very slow moving, kind of slice of life. I would say that it errs on the side of being a very cozy book, but it does have deeper, darker topics that are discussed. And the last 100 pages of this book, just all the plot happens in the last 100 pages. And not in a bad way, not saying the rest of the book doesn't have a plot. It's just that so many things happen in the last 100 pages that I was getting whiplash reading this book. Prior to starting this book, I thought it was going to be very bookish and cute and cozy and lighthearted, but it goes a lot deeper than that, and it does discuss some darker topics that I feel like could be a trigger for some people. I don't know if there's an official trigger warning list for this book, but I would say if there are certain topics that you know could trigger you, I would recommend looking up trigger warnings for this book. I love most of the storytelling in this book, besides what I mentioned earlier about how you're in first person perspective, but there's a lot of mystery around the thoughts in Loveday's head despite being in her head. I would say the core of this book is self-discovery and learning how to trust others and trust yourself. It also focuses a lot on family dynamics and growing up in certain environments, as well as forgiveness and heartache and grief within your family. So this was a very moving story. I did feel a little bit emotional at times. The synopsis of this book did say for lovers of the storied life of A.J. Fickery, and I did read that last year and I did really enjoy it. I would say I liked this book even more than the storied life of A.J. Fickery, so if you read that book and either you liked it or you didn't, I would recommend this book as well, because I feel like it captures the same essence, but it has more development. As soon as I finished this book, I did want to give it 5 stars, but I think I'm gonna sit on a rating for it for now. But yeah, second book done. This isn't bookish or reading related, but I did want to include this in this vlog because because it's coming out before Lunar New Year, and that is me building my Lego money tree. I was shopping on Lego for a Christmas gift for my nephew, and then I saw this and I really wanted to get it for Lunar New Year. It is a money tree with red envelopes and mandarins on it, and I think it's so cute. This was part of their 2024 Lunar New Year collection, which was the Year of the Dragon, so it's perfect for me because I'm the Year of the Dragon, and on the red envelopes there's little dragons on them. My family celebrates Lunar New Year every single year, and I wanted to build this for my parents and just put it downstairs on display, like on the dining room table or something. As this video is coming out right before Lunar New Year, I do want to wish everyone happy Lunar New Year if you celebrate. Wishing you all prosperity and good fortune and joy and good health for the upcoming year. Anyway, I'm going to get started on building this out. Reading update. I did start the last book for this reading vlog, which was Pure Color by Sheila Heti. It's a really short book. It's only 216 pages and I'm on page 102. So I'm a little bit under halfway through, but pretty much halfway through this book. This book is structured kind of oddly. It has different parts in the book and it's labeled like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but they're not really written out like true chapters. They're quite literally 2 pages like this. And even then, some of the pages aren't even full pages. They're just a couple paragraphs on one page, and like that's pretty much it. Despite it being a very short book, I would not say it is an easy read or like a fast-paced read or anything like that. I think it's a book that you're meant to read in a sitting, but you also have to have the time to kind of sit and process through what is being said in the book. If there was not a synopsis for this book, I don't think I'd be able to explain what the plot is because I feel like there really is no plot in this book. I think that I'm just not a fan of abstract books. I am a character-driven person. I really love books with character development and books where I can connect with the characters alongside a pretty good plot, but I feel like this book is so abstract that I cannot connect with the characters and there's really no plot that is happening in this book. I feel like this book is just an amalgamation of the author's existential thoughts put into one story, because at the part that I'm at, Mira is kind of processing her father's grief, and this is before she turns into a leaf. She talks about her father's passing as well as her grief in kind of different stages, and in saying that, she talks about the moment that he dies multiple times, and she talks about it in different ways each time. So it kind of feels like it's just a jumble of ideas together, and each of the ideas that the author has had about that moment of grief, about that moment of her father passing, is put into this book. In saying that, this book is super philosophical. I think it's meant to make you think about life and grief and love in a larger than life kind of way. It also talks about the first draft of creation, like when God created the earth kind of thing. In doing that, the author kind of also talks about the end of the world, alluding to climate change and war and crimes that have happened, in a way to say that the first draft of creation is flawed, and maybe in the second draft of creation, life would be better. And I think if you're interested in philosophy and have like a couple hours of your day or however long it takes you to read a 200-page book, to sit down and kind of consume the book as a whole and really understand the different concepts that are being brought up in this book in one sitting, I feel like it can have a more profound effect on you. I wouldn't mind reading a philosophical book if I felt like it was part of a more cohesive story, but this doesn't feel like it's a cohesive story. It just feels like a bunch of thoughts thrown together. So I am really appreciating the writing of this. It's just not intriguing enough for me to continue. It is a super short book and I'm almost halfway through, so I kind of feel like I just have to keep trucking through. Maybe I'm not the right target audience for this book, but I genuinely don't know what I'm reading sometimes. I have no idea what she was just talking about. I can't even remember anymore. It's just like reading this book feels like a fever dream, and I'm currently reading it. I can't even imagine what I'll think of this book like a year from now when I look back on this reading experience and think about this book, because right now it feels like a fever dream. since I finished Pure Color, so I thought I'd finally give a final thoughts update and as well as final thoughts on all of the books that I read in this video. Starting off with Pure Color. So I did finish this a couple of days ago, and I don't think my thoughts have changed or anything has been different from the last time I gave an update on this book. I still think it is a little bit absurd and weird, and the writing is kind of all over the place, and it still feels like it was a fever dream. I took a few days to digest what I read in this book, and I still can't explain what this book is about. Yeah, I don't think this book was for me, but I definitely can see why people would like this book. And I think if you're in the mood to read something philosophical yet has no plot and you're just kind of ruminating on the ideas that the author has, then this book is for you. Here are the 3 books that I had read in this video. The first one being Bright Young Woman by Jessica Knoll. I ended up giving this 4 stars. The next book I read was The Lost Forwards Bookshop by Stephanie Butland. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4.25 stars. And lastly, I read Pure Color by Sheila Heti. I ended up giving this 2 stars. Looking at the books that I read, I wouldn't say it's very diverse. Despite the authors being from different countries, I would say the stories itself aren't very diverse. I would say the most diverse thing about this is the genres. I normally wouldn't gravitate towards philosophical books or mystery thrillers, and Pure Color does have a queer relationship in it. Although it's not the focal point of the book, it's still a little bit of representation. So overall, I didn't do an amazing job at finding diverse reads, but I do like the idea of reading books from authors from different countries, and I am excited to diversify my reading a little bit more with different authors in different countries around the world moving forward. That pretty much wraps up this video. If you are interested in following along on my reading journey outside of the videos that I do always have my Goodreads and Fable linked in the descriptions of the videos. I've been using Goodreads for I think only like 2 to 3 years now, and then I started using Fable earlier this year, so I'm kind of new to the Fable space. But yeah, thanks for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.